Hey guys, how's everyone doing today? So for those of you who haven't been hearing the news, last night, well, I guess it would have been early this morning, Ukraine time, Russia has officially come into Ukraine's border territories, and they are currently, well, I say currently, they have been bombing. They were using cruise missiles and things like that as well. Ukraine is fighting back against them. The Ukraine ambassador was going into the UN meeting to speak, and his speech was basically nullified by the time he got there. It took him about an hour to get there, 45 minutes into his trip. Russia had already invaded, and he was going to be asking Russia not to come into the Ukraine. So for those who aren't really aware how that's going to affect us. So Ukraine is top number 5 in the world on wheat production. So you're going to expect to see your prices of anything wheat-based go up in this country as well, because we do import from Ukraine when it comes to wheat and things like that. Went out today and just getting stocked up on some odds and ends and stuff like that, cycling gasoline and stuff, and the price of gas went up $1.20 per gallon this morning in this area. So it is now right at $4 for a gallon of gas. It's just over $5 for a gallon of diesel. So if you haven't gotten stocked up, those prices are not going to come down while this conflict is going on. So why did Putin choose this time to invade? You might be asking or wondering why that is. So while Donald Trump was in office, one of the things he focused on was building up our reserves of fuel and things like that. And that was also going to be making it so we can export to our European allies. And when Biden got in office, he put an end to all that. The reserves have been depleting down. And the reason Putin is moving in now, in my opinion, is because he knows that the European nations and stuff who are going to be dependent upon their fuel source coming out of Russia at this point, because we're no longer exporting to them, we're importing from Saudi Arabia. He knows that they're not going to be able to sustain those sanctions and things because he's got them, by the balls, so to speak, with fuel. And, as far as what does this mean? Are we going to war and things like that? So I don't imagine that the United States is going to go over boots on the ground, things like that. We will probably be providing equipment and stuff. NATO, depending on which group you're watching, they say that NATO won't get involved at all. I don't expect them to get involved. I expect them to try to blockade like the Black Sea and things like that, at which point you could end up having what they call false flag events, where maybe we sink one of our own ships to be able to draw ourselves into battle. It's hard to say, guys. It really is. But the impact I expect to see in this country is the prices of things going up. With inflation already being what it was, people were finding it hard to continue to get their needs for food and stuff like that, let alone be able to prep back. So if you haven't been prepping, you really need to get to the store. I made a swing out today and just buying some extra stuff for the quail and for the chickens and stuff. And I decided to stop by a couple of stores I usually shop at. So one of them was Grocery Outlet. And their supplies, as far as what they're selling, while the shelves look fairly full, the variety is no longer there. So you used to be able to buy a lot of spinach and a lot of different types of canned vegetables and stuff like that. Basically, all they had on the shelves is corn and green beans. That was it. That's all I seen. The prices of that stuff has nearly doubled from what it was earlier in the week. Went out to Walmart. Again, shelves are looking bleak. Went down to dog food aisle to buy some dog food. All they had was some off-brand stuff, and it was twice as expensive as usually what it costs. It usually is $10 for that type of dog food. It was $20 for a 15-pound bag. The dog food I usually buy, you can buy a 50-pound bag for that price. So I talked to the woman there, and she said they just haven't been getting the stock in. She's not really sure what's happening, but it's like they're not able to get the food and different things like that. Not just dog food, but other types of food and stuff as well. And apparently the reason you're not seeing the high variety of vegetables and stuff is because the farmers have been reporting that a lot of their crops failed, and then with the pandemic a lot of the crops were destroyed and things like that because they didn't have a way to process that stuff, and it was rotting in the fields, it was rotting at the supply chain, so they actually had to destroy a lot of it. So maybe you're looking at your cans and you're seeing best by dates that are getting close to running out. So the reason for that is this is stuff that was canned 2 or 3 years ago. They're not really canning anything new because of the workforce depletion that we had a year or so ago. So it's taking a little bit of time to get all that kicked back up. So we're going to be seeing a lot of price changing here. You're going to see price gouging. If you're in a state and you're seeing price gouging take place, you need to contact your local law enforcement. You need to contact your mayors, your governors and stuff, let them know what's going on. That way they can put an end to that, because that is illegal to do price gouging, even though they do it anyway. It doesn't really help to report them, but it doesn't hurt either. So, but the last reports that I've seen, and you have to really watch what channels you're watching, guys. So last night I was kind of sweeping between the live streams, and one of the channels was MSNBC, and the woman that was up there reporting, I forget what her name was, but she was all hyped up, and she was standing over in Kyiv, and she's talking about how she has personally seen, Russian troops in Kyiv. Russia has not got to Kyiv yet, okay? They were still about 3 hours by vehicle from Kyiv, which is places them at the border of that area of the Ukraine. But they were in eastern Ukraine, southeastern Ukraine, coming into the two areas that were now declared as sovereign by Putin. He used that as an excuse to move his troops in. One of the first targets that they took out was an area of a small town that Fox News had been doing some reporting in. They were showing where they had been receiving military aid from America and different NATO allies. And that was the very first place that was hit last night with their cruise missiles. Destroyed a lot of their stuff. Now they do have other equipment they've actually managed to take out. The last report I seen was like one chopper and a few planes, and there was like over 47 Russian soldiers that had been wounded or dead. They haven't really confirmed that yet, but that's what I've been seeing. I don't watch MSNBC usually, but I wanted to kind of see what they were doing, because they were the only ones who was reporting at the time. And the woman was talking about the explosions and the air raid sirens, and then she was saying, if you look behind her, that you could see how the people were frantically evacuating the town. But when you look behind her, there's cars going about like daily business. Now those are moving essential personnel that is needed within the government, because that was at the Capitol building. The town itself, the city itself, there was no one moving out at that time. Martial law has been declared in Ukraine. For those who don't realize that, the president declared that yesterday evening, early this morning. Martial law is declared in Ukraine at this point. He's telling everybody to stay in, to stay home, do not be out on the streets. But if you have to go, evacuate. Don't hang around. So just kind of an update of what we're looking at there, guys. Again, man, not to sound like a broken record, if you're not prepping, you need to start prepping now. Tax season coming up here. Some of us get refunds. Some of us have to pay in. For those that have to pay in, I hate it for you. Definitely plan your taxes out where you're going to get those refunds, because those things are nice to get at the beginning of the year to buy supplies or whatever you need to do. It's better to get something back and hold a little bit more out the end of the year than is to have to pay a chunk at the end of the year. So, but that's just my advice to you. Now there's a lot of people that are saying, they don't have extra money to prep and things like that. You can still find a few cans that are worth 50 cents, that cost you about 50 cents at a Walmart. Maybe it's 88 cents depending on the area that you're at. Buy a couple of cans, unless you're just pushed to the penny and you're always, that's one of the situations where you need to determine, do you need internet? Do you need cable? Do you need satellite? Things like that. It's time to start making sacrifices. There's a lot of ways we could sacrifice on the luxuries of life to get the necessities of life. This is a type of deal where you need to start planning for your long-term survival, guys, because we don't know how long this can take. I don't expect the conflict over there to last more than 2 years, and the reason for that is because Putin is coming up for re-election in 2 years. So either he's going to have it all solved within a few months, or it's going to be drawn out and it's going to end up a situation like what happened in Crimea. For those who don't realize what that is, in 2014, Putin did the exact same thing in Crimea, which was the southern Ukraine, right next to the sea, and he took that, he annexed it. They own that now. He will not give that back to the Ukraine. That is now Russian territory. They call it orange territory. It is Russia's territory, and you need to realize what's happening over there. He's rebuilding the USSR. I see comments about, I don't really care what they're doing on that side of the world. Well, you need to start caring, because communism is on the rise. That's exactly what this is. For those who don't know, Putin is KGB. That was his background. He wants to see Soviet Russia, the USSR, back in place. Okay, it's coming back into play, and I guarantee you China's following suit with that. And even though Germany's acting like they're not really agreeing to this stuff, they were the very first ones after Crimea to invite Russia back into the UN. So for those who don't realize, right now the UN, they cycle the head of the UN nations and things like that every year or so. Right now it is Russia, the Federation of Russia, that is the president of the UN. Talk about perfect timing. The next one to come up, that's up there right now, is going to be China. So I don't expect to see this die down anytime soon. If you're not prepping, you need to get prepping. If you can't go out and buy a bunch of food, 88 cents will buy you a pack of seeds, which is going to grow you 20 to 40 plants, depending on what you're buying. And sure, you don't want to eat the same stuff all the time, but it's better than starving. Maybe you have to go out and buy those big box of ramen noodles. You can buy a big pack for, $6 or $7 if you can find it in the store. And sure, you don't want to eat ramen noodles all the time, but it's better than having to do like over in North Korea where they're grabbing handfuls of grass and getting arrested because they're eating the grass out of the parks. But I hope everyone's having a great day. Definitely keep up with what's going on overseas because it is having implications and impacts within our own country.